Thank you for joining Coffee and Conversations about Steps Beyond Statements. I'm Danielle Coburn, the Executive Director of Strategic Marketing. We encourage you to use the chat button at the bottom of your screen to ask questions and interact with other attendees throughout the session. Our speakers will be answering some questions live, and other questions may be answered in the chat by our behind-the-scenes panelists. And now, I'm pleased to turn it over to Dr. Baston.
Hello and welcome each and every one of you to our Coffee and Conversations, where we bring interesting members of our college community together to talk about the amazing topics that we have, that we are addressing at our college. First, let me thank you for your brilliant work at the start of this new semester. We have a robust group of learners who are engaging quite well with all of the faculty and staff virtually, and those that are coming on campus as well. And we wanted to begin this September's presentation with an important topic that we've been discussing through the summer, our work around steps beyond statements. What we do know is if we are going to effectively engage in a meaningful dialogue about how we engage in reform, equity-minded reform for both our students and our employees, it's going to take the voices of all of us to make that work happen. And so I want to give you a sense of how we got to this work, what this work will entail, and then I want to talk about those leaders who are going to lead us forward. We're going to engage them in some great conversation today. And so we're going to start. I've got a little PowerPoint to kind of give you some of the details, and we're going to play that right now. So once again, our program is called Steps Beyond Statements. This is our effort at helping us to become a more inclusively excellent institution. Whenever you're going to start these kinds of events or initiatives, you have to be able to answer a fundamental question. Why engage in equity-focused reform? Well, we know for our college that it elevates our college mission, our vision, and our values. It affirms the role of public institutions of higher education in strengthening the nation. It illustrates the unique educational and convening roles of community colleges. It expands our institutional redesign efforts beyond the student experience, and equity-focused reform catalyzes campus-wide collaboration and commitment. And these are the reasons that we set forth by the Board of Trustees, who basically put together a resolution affirming our work, Steps Beyond Statements. So let me tell you a little bit about the working group and some of the things that they're going to be doing. We will be conducting an institutional self-assessment on equity practices. We'll really want to understand what we're doing at our campus. There'll be the development of an institutional equity practice set of expectations in our non-academic spaces of the college. So we're not just going to be thinking about what the students experience are with equitable practices, but also for those who are in the non-academic spaces. We're also going to identify campus-based and external experts with experience in growing the knowledge base of faculty and staff in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And of course, we are going to have a comprehensive process for monitoring, reviewing, and updating the equity scorecards and related activities to this great work. We wanted, of course, to have a good place to start. And so these are some of the critical questions that we want to ask ourselves. Of course it is, what problems are we trying to solve? What are the areas in the student and employee experience that we need to actually look at systems and augment them where there are inequities? Also, how have others addressed it? Where we might find some ways to do things in a novel way, but we're also going to look at to see what our colleges and our colleagues around the country are also doing. And then the reality is, how will you? How will we identify the problems? How are we going to work to address them? How are we going to move and take steps beyond statements? And so one of the places we have started was the work that we did with Guided Pathways, advancing equity through guided pathways. And so there is a wonderful set of recommendations that come from the National Center for Inquiry and Improvement on how you exactly think about the work of guided pathways as the lens by which you do your equity work. So we didn't want to start with equity work outside of the things that we know are important to us. We have said at this college that we are going to focus on guided pathways and on creating our career and English skills academies. And so we are not going to be off doing something different. We're going to stay with our primary focus, guided pathways. We're just going to apply the guided pathways framework to the employee experience as well as the student experience. So let me give an example. With respect to the student experience will have the equity-focused reform opportunities. And in our next slide, we're going to show you that. Specifically, as you recall, we're talking about connection. What are our practices that are creating maybe potential barriers in terms of equity around the interest to application? Where are we recruiting students? How are we making sure that they get into the right programs that lead to good outcomes for them? And then, of course, entry. How do we make sure that they have a good, smooth transition, their first year experience, get through those difficult classes, and that we want that for all students, not just students of color, not just white students, all students. We want them to be able to be successful. In terms of progress, how are we going to make sure that they get into programs of study, that we monitor their progress, and that everybody has the same opportunity to succeed? And then, of course, completion. How do we make sure that our students complete the credential of value for further education and labor market advancement? So there are systems that are connected to each of these elements of the student experience. We're going to look at those systems to make sure that our outcomes are appropriate. We're also going to do that for our employees. So with respect to the employee experience, they have that same pillar as the students, but we call it candidacy. This is recruitment through the hiring process. Where are we getting candidates from, and how are we making sure that there's fairness in that process? And then, of course, there is the new hire experience. From onboarding to the completion of the first year of service, how have we connected our new employees to senior employees that are in the institution and set them up to be successful with professional development plans? Of course, we want them to make progress, as we want the students to make progress. And so this is the professional development and achievement. How can we ensure that people make a contribution, that we retain them, and that they can build a legacy worthy of succession? And then, of course, transition. How do we ensure that people finish their service to the college but stay connected to the college? So those are the things, those are the systems that we're going to look at in the Steps Beyond Statement work, both for students as well as employees. And so we're going to do this work under the guidance of our working groups. And they have a very specific charge. Here are our two co-chairs, Allegra Abraham, who is the Assistant Registrar for Records and Registration, and Stephen Burke, the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities. And this is the charge for the working groups: to advance access, diversity, inclusion, equity, and the well-being of all Rockland Community College constituencies through inclusive leadership, cultural competency, cognitive diversity, a climate of inclusiveness, cultural intelligence, intercultural communication, and intentionality. That this work is not going to be done by accident. This work is actually going to be done in very intentional ways, and they're going to get into, our co-chairs are going to talk a little bit about specifically how they're going to move the work forward. We're also employing the help and assistance of an extraordinary national leader. He wrote this book called The Diversity Calling, and really tries to help colleges, universities not just the community college, but many throughout the country on how do you build these inclusive communities. And just to give you a little bit of his background, of course, he was the Elite Associate for Education and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Delta Developmental. He's been a Chief Diversity Officer and Associate Vice President at the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Cal State Marcos. He's been Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at the Kingston Bay Group, a faculty member and consultant with Boston College's Lynch School of Education. And of course, he serves on the board of directors of many organizations, including Root Strong, a not-for-profit committed to multicultural leadership, education, and development, and a board member of the Diversity Collegium, a cross-sector think tank of diversity practitioners. So Dr. McManus is one of the leading scholars in this area. He's in the midst of working on a new book relative to this work. So we're very pleased to have him to assist both Allegra as well as Stephen as they lead this great work. So that's sort of a high level conceptualization of steps beyond statements, but I am so excited and so pleased to have our co-chairs today to talk with us and to join us, and they are Allegra Abraham and Stephen Burke. And I ask them to join us now.
Hello.
Hello, hello,
Thanks,
hello.
Dr. Beth.
Certainly good to have you both today on Coffee and Conversation. And I hope you have your own coffee. Everybody, we couldn't give you coffee anymore. That's my RCC mug, but coffee, water, whatever. But today we really want to hear from these extraordinary leaders and how they're going to help us move our work together forward with Steps Beyond Statements. So take it away, Stephen and Allegra.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Baston. Can we share a few slides we have?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Evan. So to get specific on the work that, the significant work that Dr. Baston just put in front of you, and it's a big charge, obviously, but we're going to be, Allegra and I are going to be leading this charge with the help of individuals, both faculty, staff, and students throughout the college. And we really very much are going to be needing representatives from every single segment of the college, because we're trying to do something that's extremely focused, that's complicated, but extremely important, and I think extremely timely to work on right now. And a lot of our preliminary work is going to be done in the next 3 months. So get ready to, I hope, work with us on this slide. We're going to be, first of all, we're going to be asking and sending out soon after this presentation a short equity form for everybody to fill out, trying to get information about little time card, if you will, where we are, where we're succeeding, where we're not, how you're feeling about things are in terms of equity, many of the equity issues at RCC. We're going to be using that information to create several different groups that you'll have an opportunity to participate with us. There will be a focus group that will be looking and drilling down based on what we find in the equity scorecard. We'll be looking to create an institutional assessment survey as well. Next slide. And we'll have a couple of working groups that folks can get involved with. We're going to be putting together a group that specifically looks at the student experience, addressing both the challenges and the opportunities that students have at RCC, and obviously thinking about how we can increase the opportunities and how we can lessen the challenges and obstacles that students face. And then we're also going to be looking at an institutional assessment group. We're putting that together. That's going to be specifically looking at issues of equity, diversity, and inclusivity, both the opportunities and challenges for our staff and faculty at all different levels at RCC. Going back to the topics that Dr. Baston raised, and really taking the steps beyond, but using the framework of the guided pathway that we think has really been focusing on really very effectively in transforming our college now. The focus groups will be exploring topics and ideas surfaced in the survey that's going to be going out. And our goal is to get this done, this preliminary work, to organize the surveys, the focus groups, the 2 teams, and get it done in October, November, and December. And this is where we come up with a plan. And the next step will be really what are our action items that we'll be recommending to Dr. Baston and the board. Allegra?
So our last step is to do monthly updates to say where we're at, give the college some insight in where we're at and what we need to do to analyze the findings that we have, and then at some point make a final recommendation on what we feel are the steps that need to be taken towards achieving the goals of this project.
Excellent. So thank you both, Allegra and Stephen, for giving us sort of an overview of the work that you're going to be doing. I have just a few questions, and I want to let everybody know you certainly can add your questions, and we will answer those questions during this time together. But I just want to ask a question to both of the guests today. Sort of as you thought about the request that we made that you step up and you lead this, sort of, how did you feel you could actually do it with everything? Because both of you have so much going on, but what is it about this work that is meaningful to you and that kind of motivated you to want to be a part of it? Either one of you can start.
Stephen, you can go first.
Okay, thank you, Allegra. Well, I was intrigued by the request. And thinking back about the experience, my own experience with the questions of equity. I mean, I grew up in and around New York City at a time when the city was verging on anarchy, unlike today. No comments on our Attorney General. But I had really few obstacles in my path to academic success, except the ones that were self-inflicted. I went to a parochial high school in the Bronx, kind of the Catholic version of Bronx science. The year behind me, Sonia Sotomayor, who's on the Supreme Court right now. Yay, Sonia. And it was a pretty well integrated student body in my high school years, except in the lunchroom when it was regrettably very, very, very self-segregated. And then I went on to university and graduated in 4 years because that was what was expected of me. I was not the first person in my family. My father had gone to college and had graduate work behind him as well. So there weren't a lot of obstacles. But when I went to grad school up at Binghamton, I was really sort of gifted with an opportunity to work with a new program that we just started, a developmental program. It was called the Transitional Year Program, where we took a bunch of students who were really underrepresented populations of students who were given financial and academic support for a full year to prepare them to succeed at a very top-notch state university. A lot of the students dropped out because it was still a big leap, but a number of them succeeded. And for me, this was really a transformative experience in my thinking about equity, because I got to work one-on-one with a number of students who are also from New York, but whose life experiences and particularly the kinds of obstacles, significant obstacles that were placed in their path was really very different than my own. And when I flash forward many years later and I had an opportunity to come to RCC, I've been here for 15 years now. I started as an adjunct professor and then worked in a reading and writing center, teaching lots of writing and lit classes, working in the center, meeting with many, many students. And I've learned to really always include a lot of, at least at the very beginning, particularly when I'm in the classroom, some piece of autobiographical writing for the students. It's what they know best. It lessens their anxiety. It's their expert area. But it's also, it helps me to understand my students. It helps them to give them an opportunity and space to write their story. And when I've worked in the Writing Center in particular, and helping students work on scholarships and transfer letters, I always tell them, tell your authentic story. Let people know what struggles you went through to get here that you've already overcome in order to get where you are. And I've always been amazed at the extraordinary stories that students have. And all of our students, including the honor students, as Katie and Carol Coiro know really well, the incredible challenges that they've already surmounted to get here. I know that we don't live in a very equitable society right now, and our college is not a perfect refuge from the rest of American society. But I think this guided pathways approach really has the best opportunity in a short time, based on what we've already done, to really move the ball forward, to make some real significant structural changes that we can do to help our students and to support them as they create and tell their stories. So that's why I'm interested in this.
I love it. I really appreciate those remarks. Allegra?
Okay. So my story, I am a native Rockland born and raised. I went to the local high school. Spring Valley is where I graduated. And although RCC wasn't my first choice, I did go away because, like most teenagers, you want to get out of your parents' house and figure yourself out a little bit. The following year, I did come to RCC after I had a child. So my story is a little different. I have experienced RCC as a student worker, as a provisional worker, a permanent employee in CSEA, and now an administrator. So I've had that experience, and then it's also the interactions that I've had with the students throughout the years. The reason why I think I accepted this position is we are in the year of 2020, and it has been referred to as the year of vision. When you think of 2020, you think of eyesight. And for the years that I've been here, I have not taken on the opportunity to let my voice be heard. There was a congressman that I was listening to one of the news channels, and he told his story, and his reasoning for telling his story was because he didn't want people to feel like I did not know. So after I thought about 2020 and vision, and the fact that I have not told my story and where we are in this economy and this environment today, people won't know until you speak up. And so for me to speak up and participate and tell the story of my years and how RCC has impacted me and helped me grow and given me insight, it's an opportunity that would be a shame for me not to participate in and explore and bring my truth and hopefully have others bring theirs. Multiple times RCC has had surveys and other activities, and I haven't participated, but I had expectations from those surveys or that activity. And I think that I fell short because I didn't participate, but I had an expectation of the outcome. There's been multiple times when I've gotten private conversations with other employees or other students, and they will voice their opinion in those private conversations, but for whatever reason, they choose not to participate in something that could be impactful. So it was a self-reflection for me, and to see how I can be a voice to help and help others speak up to have a truthful and honest conversation respectfully.
Thank you so much. And it's so interesting because it feels like we're at a moment at our college where the possibility of becoming more is realized. I mean, we kind of 2 years ago said, let's try this guided pathways thing. And now we have 5 academic schools, and we have advisors we never had before. And now we've got, new language centers that we never had before. We've got all of we've got funding that come from the federal government in ways that we did not receive them before. We did get a Title III back many years ago, but in terms of now, there's an interest in our college to be a real leader in the space of sort of community colleges. So it does feel like a moment that we could really, together as a community, redefine the American community college. Would you agree with that idea, Stephen?
I do. I think this is very much a moment it's certainly a moment for RCC, but it does feel like a pivotal moment in society writ large, both in New York and around the country. but it is amazing just looking back at a short time, as you said, within the last couple of years, uh, how far we've come, how much we've done, and we see, but how much we can do. And it is, I'm always, I know a number of folks around SUNY, work with them on lots of different projects, and increasingly they do look at RCC as certainly among the 30 or so, I think it's 30 community colleges that's in the system. We are, in many different areas, a real leader, and they look at us, and we always say yes, which I think is really important. Say yes when an opportunity comes along, and when also a time comes along. And I think, for this project, the time is now.
How about you, Allegra? Do you feel like is this a moment for our college that we have to kind of take advantage of?
It's a big moment. It's a big moment for the college, for the students, and for the faculty. To be an institution of higher education, that's all about change and exploring and evolving. So this is an opportunity that we need to take and see how we can enhance the college.
And Allegra, you both talked a little bit about sort of ways that people can get involved. How do you envision getting people in the conversation, ways that they can get in at a level of their comfort in this conversation?
So as Stephen mentioned, there's going to be several working groups and focus groups. My vision is the student athlete, the trio student, the honor student, maintenance, anyone who has a voice that wants to explore equity and inclusion. They're all resources to us, and sometimes we don't tap into those resources because we've placed them in a box. So it's bringing them people out of the box and exploring what they have to say and what they can bring to the table. So my vision is inclusion across the board.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would definitely second what Allegra said. This is all about like trying to make ourselves a more inclusive place in college for our students, for our faculty, and also particularly, certainly for our staff as well, and to make people comfortable enough, we hope. Maybe I'm off-putting Allegra, so no, it's not. She's a much nicer person than I am. So
You're both pretty spectacular, but
so hopefully, our goal is to make it really comfortable for people to participate. And maybe I'm hoping that we will get some folks beyond the usual suspects. I know a lot of people I can call on, and they will respond, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be really, really pleasantly surprised by folks who really want to be involved in this important project that affects everybody here, and is something that people want to do. And we're going to be doing lots of digging in and exploring in a short time during the fall. But we know this is a project that's obviously just going to probably, we hope, come up with some direction at the end of the fall, and that we can give to you, Dr. Baston, in January. But that's obviously just the beginning of the process, because this is a huge project, and it's something that is not going to be done in an instant, and is depending on what we find, and we know we're going to find a lot of things that need working on. It's going to be exciting, I think, to identify them, and being extremely open-ended while we're being inclusive, to not to limit ourselves, and see what's the vision that we can have, and then let's see how we can do it. And I also think that the process that we've been doing the last couple of years of really rethinking the school from top to bottom, it seems to me, in Guided Pathways is a really good model that we can use. And we have JoJo has been a really big help to Allegra and me, and just talking through a lot of these ideas, and also the work that Melissa Roy is doing with Natalie, in many ways parallel to our work. We'll be working together as well. So there's lots of great resources here.
We got a great question. Can RCC accomplish this project alone? Won't we need significant resources to do this? Great question.
Yes.
Well, I think I'll start, but I'll ask you guys to kind of add in. You know, part of what we're going to be doing in terms of the resources on our campus is that we're going to be getting some resources from the State University of New York through the Guided Pathways work, and we are working with them to see if we can get some of the seed money that we will need to do some of the work that we'd like to do. So that is important. And in fact, every institution around the country has to develop their own Steps Beyond Statements work. We are working in our Steps Beyond Statements work based on what works for us. And we have found that Guided Pathways as a model works for us because we do know that it gives us specific critical junctures in the student experience and critical junctures in the employee experience, that there are systems in place that influence those junctures. And this is the critical thing about this work. We are going to be analyzing the systems that are currently producing the outcomes at each of these junctures in the student experience and the employee experience, and determining whether the systems that are producing the current results need to be augmented. Are there barriers that we don't even realize are barriers that we have to interrogate and to address and to reform? You know, are there things that we can do that other institutions are doing that not because we didn't want to do it, but because we weren't aware that this is a way to solve this problem or achieve this end. And so that's what I think is really exciting about this. But you all, can you talk a little bit more about how JoJo McManus is going to be helpful as well to the work that you're doing in terms of as a national expert on this work?
Yeah, and I think when we think about resources obviously it's about money, and we'll be identifying that. And I do think some of that will come through SUNY. As you also alluded to, we've already gotten we just got our second Title V grant, which is kind of pretty extraordinary. And the work of the Title V grants we have right now, it really feeds into this whole question of equity. But resources is a very big topic, and it's also about people power, and it's about understanding what are the possibilities that are out there, beyond maybe the experience of those of us who've been working at Rockland Community College. And that's somebody like JoJo who's got national experience. You gave his background, his quick view of his resume. JoJo's got experience at lots of different institutions across the country, from California to CUNY to Massachusetts. So he spans the U.S. And that kind of additional perspective and experience, and hey, here's some examples that you may not be aware of, is really going to be key to us getting done what we want to do in a very short amount of time. So I seems like a good time maybe to ask JoJo to add on to that.
Sure.
Sorry, JoJo, on the spot.
Dr. McManus, would you come on and visit with us? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. JoJo McManus, and certainly good to have him. He's in Massachusetts right now, and we are grateful to have you as a part of our community. Dr. McManus, you have really worked with institutions around the country, and really part of your work, you actually have been helping to establish standards by which institutions look at equitable practice. Could you talk a little bit about that background and how you think some of that experience will be helpful to us at Rockland Community College?
I knew you were going to pull me from the back at some point, but I'm glad to be here. So every institution is different, right? And a lot of institutions at all times are looking at these sort of issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how they can do better. Right? You develop a strategic plan, and this is all part of that process. And the resources outside will be determined, what you need will be determined by what your plan is. The benchmarks and the standards that I've worked on are meant for both higher education and other sectors, right? And those give us the opportunity to examine what's being done in any institution and look at it in comparison to what's being done in other places, and then get ideas. I think it's important that we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. We can get good ideas from other institutions, and institutions like RCC lead the way. And things that you do will again be used by other institutions to advance, right? So it's all a part of a larger higher education community. And part of my role is just to make sure that we have access to all of those resources and that we're able to look at benchmarks and other resources to figure out where we're at and how we best move forward.
And quickly, could you tell us what your new book, he's working on a new book now, and I'm going to kind of out him a little bit on this new book. What's your new book that you're working on right now?
The new book is somewhat based on my experience, but bringing in some other folks that I've worked with over the years and focusing specifically on living an anti-racist life, both personally and professionally.
Thank you so much. And so we do have access to really, really phenomenal resources and people that actually are out there on the front lines of thinking about these conversations nationally. So we didn't want to limit our reach to higher education, recognizing that some really good diversity, equity, inclusion work is happening beyond the walls of higher education as well. Allegra, as you think about the employee experience, can you talk to us a little bit about how you hope employees will take advantage of opportunities to participate? Because we do want to see more diversity in the various opportunities as people move up the ranks at the institution.
Yes, I think that is very important. We have a phenomenal group of employees that work here that have insight from their job, their current jobs and former places that they have worked. And, you know, during some of our conversations, we were kind of saying, how do we put a pool of people's or a dashboard of people's prior work experience to see how we can bring them in to impact some of the surveys and some of the information, and how will it be useful for what we're trying to do, to collaborate with them. So, you know, knowing some of the employees and things that they've done in the past, I do think that we have a host of faculty, adjuncts, hourlies, grant people that just have resources and knowledge that we haven't tapped into, and we don't know to tap into them because we don't know what their history, what they bring with them. So it's gathering that information and saying, hey, how can you benefit what we're trying to do right now? How can you contribute to it? So everyone is welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, you certainly can put any questions that you might have in the chat feature. We will actually be able to answer the questions. You know, here's a question. Do you believe institutional and infrastructure modifications are needed in regard to fostering this initiative? Do we need institutional and infrastructure modifications in regard to fostering this initiative? What do you think, co-chairs?
Thank you, Dr. Merritt. Yeah, I would say short answer is yes. And what Dr. Baston, you know, you guys read the charge to us and to all of you, actually, to everybody. Did not put any limits on thinking about this. And so, you know, obviously we may come up against limits, structural limits and you know, economic limits, but for the moment, it's really thinking about, like, let's think about how do we make things better at RCC? How do we make this a more equitable college? How do we make this one of the leaders in the state and in the country as in order to promoting equitable practices for our employees and for our students? So I would say absolutely, in terms of thinking about that, we have to come up against and think about, as we move into the action portion of this project, what institutional and infrastructure modifications we're going to be making. I mean, I think without that, you know, we'd really be limiting ourselves to what we can actually accomplish.
And I would agree, because at this moment, we don't want to think about limits.
Right.
We did not know when we worked on the Guided Pathways project that we would get any money from the federal government in terms of a Title V grant. We did all the work of preparing with the working groups. More than 70 people from the campus community populated 5 working groups, worked over the course of 2 years. When they started the work, they had no idea that there would be actual dollars to actually fund the things that they were coming up with. But they built sort of the system of transformation of the institution. And what happened, quite frankly, is that the resources have followed. I believe that we should not have limits on what we want to accomplish. I think we should really think about the systems that are in place, because those are things, systems can be impacted in many ways very, very quickly. And so I want to make sure that we look at the systems. It could be a systematic thing where we need to advertise for students to come in on let's just take as a practical example. Let's take the connection phase of the student experience. And we want to have a more diverse student population. Well, we have to look at where we're recruiting. We have to look at the recruitment materials. Maybe the recruitment materials have to be multilingual because families want the information in a way that they can understand it so that they can support that student that may want to come to the college. So that may be one example of how we can look at systems we have, we can augment them, and it will maybe require a little additional money for purposes of translation, or maybe it's a matter of making sure we have the appropriate staffing to actually do the outreach and coordination. But we have to be open to the idea that we have systems in place. Those systems currently produce the outcomes we have. We're not always happy with the outcomes we have. If we want different outcomes, we've got to change the systems that are producing them, and that may require additional resources. It may require a bit more sort of refining in terms of the structure. But I think what is most important is that we commit ourselves to having high expectations of ourselves. We don't just want to set high expectations of students, we want to set high expectations of the whole institution. Dr. Deere, our provost, said something amazing to me the other day, and I just loved how she explained equity. She said, equity is about not just distributing t-shirts to everybody, participation t-shirts to everybody, but to distribute t-shirts and they fit the actual person that's going to get the t-shirt. And I just thought that was such a wonderful way to look at this work. Yes, we want people to be a part of it, but we also want to make sure that they can get in where they fit in so that they can really take advantage of it. Here's another great question. Effective institutional communication is a constant challenge, which I think here and about every place in the country, this is true. How will recommendations of the working group be communicated to the larger college community so that feedback may be obtained? Excellent question from one of our co-chairs of our Guided Pathways work, Melanie Rhee, who really tried to help us to manage this effectively in the previous project. And this, quite frankly, this work is a continuation of the project started by Melanie Rhee and Deb Bubidi. But I'll let you all speak to that. Go for it.
Allegra, you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, I think, again, as we stated earlier, there will be a monthly report that we communicate to the college. I believe that we've talked about having a video presentation of this report and sharing it with the college that way. However, Melanie, being that you have done this before, we are always welcome to suggestions and feedbacks from your experience. Was that a good plug?
Reel her in.
So as we are new to this, we are open to suggestions and finding ways that will best fit the college whether it's something that we've used in the past or if we find a new way of communicating, especially to our students
Yeah.
who do not read our email. So we do
No.
have to explore some other options, being that portion of this survey and equity is about them as well. So it's, can we get you guys to make an announcement in the classroom, exploring options.
Yeah, I think Allegra makes some great points. Thanks, Melanie, for volunteering. Yeah, yeah, I know where to find you. So yeah, there will be the Allegra and Stevens show will be coming to a channel close to you on a regular basis to give you reports and also to ask for your help, which is really what we're doing today. To join with us and what we think is extremely important and absolutely essential and very timely effort that we're embarking on right now. Yeah, Allegra, I think raises a really key issue and a challenge that we've been thinking about for a long time, and is even more challenging right now. It's how do you communicate with students? They have been very resistant to our usual modes of communication, especially email. They do not like email. They've made that very abundantly clear. And yet, at the time when it's really hard to convene anybody, except in very small groups, very, very small groups, nor should we, how do we communicate with them except for email? I mean, Allegra and I are happy to go in the Google machine around to everybody's home, but I don't think that's going to be effective. So we have to find ways to getting the word out and to letting people know and to finding ways to make sure that as many voices as possibly can are heard and are listened to. And I think because that's just the key part of what we're trying to do.
For all of you that are watching this program, I'd ask you to put into the chat, anybody that I'd like to put in the chat, what is the thing that actually makes you most hopeful about this kind of work? What is the thing that you hope that will really be accomplished for the college as we move forward? Because we really need our community to embrace the importance of this work. We had a fantastic presentation by some faculty members during the summer, Eileen McCavery-Kane and Talia Lipton, who did a wonderful, wonderful program talking about teaching inclusively and effectively in the virtual environment. And they really helped us to start the conversations about this great work. And I know that Melissa Roy, our Chief Diversity Officer, is going to host those kinds of conversations moving forward. But what do you hope? What are some of our hopes? What are some of our aspirations as we think about, this work and what it can mean? I see somebody put something in the chat. Will there be future advertising on cable? Well, that's a good question. Maybe it'll be around this topic. I mean, I know whatever whatever advertising we will do, part of your responsibility as part of the co-chairs in this one is to make sure that our advertising is reflective of the populations that we are trying to get. So that goes specifically to the connection phase of the student experience, which is one of the things that this working group will actually be looking toward. So we did during this summer, we did some set top advertisements, so that we actually sent advertisements specifically in Rockland County to specific cable boxes of messages about the college, but they were only for folks that would be likely to actually be converted. So we did do that over the course of the summer. So if you didn't see on your cable box an advertisement from RCC, you might not have been in the group we were trying to get. Okay, here we have
You might need to change your cable company.
Here's another one from Katie Lynch. The prospect of engaging our students in this work, hearing what they want and need from us, and taking up some of their suggestions for how we can create a more equitable community makes me hopeful. Thank you so much, Katie. What a fantastic message. I hope this work, this is Alicia, I hope this work would create a more universal-based learning for all of our students. And this is so critical. You know, the universal design concept and learning has been so helpful, and it's not just limited to our students with other abilities. All students would benefit from having a greater universal design as part of their learning. I hope it helps our students improve their lives and economic standing. Absolutely. Joe Plank, great point. Zenya Richardson, students realize that there is a way to reach their full potential. And so as you're hearing some of the concepts from those who are listening, what do you all think about what they're saying? Stephen or Allegra?
I would agree with all of them. You know, the thing that I was thinking is that maybe we should have done this during Common Hour, where we could have had more student participation. I personally reached out to some of the students that I know to have them sign up and be engaged in this conversation. However, the few that I did know had class at 3 o'clock today. So, you know, it would have been nice if this could have been a part of a classroom topic of conversation or something for, you know, certain classes to participate in. But we do need to reach our students. We do have excellent programs that if we can figure out, such as the honors programs and the mentoring, how to have that developed across the board so that the students have the proper mentoring that they need and support that they need. Yeah, I'm all in.
And I love that, because even Melanie Ree was talking about the importance of making sure that these kind of efforts get the level of communication, not just to our faculty and staff who are important in this community, but also for the student experience, and thinking about how we can leverage our time with them that would enable us to get more information. Stephen?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that gets back to this, you know, the communication challenge with the students, but also to getting the students to really giving them the power to have their voices not only heard but listened to, and that some of their suggestions are paid attention to and are enacted. And I think that's turning that script around, where they're often being told what to do, is extremely important to what we're about, and making sure that students know that this is an opportunity for them to create, not just for themselves in the short time that they're here, but also to pay it forward to other students who are going to come after them, to make this a better college, and to make us more of a model for other colleges around the state and around the country.
And it's so important, because this work, in our case, we really are looking at 4 specific critical junctures in the student experience and 4 critical junctures in the employee experience. There are many more experiences, but we are really looking at the systems that we can impact quickly, because there is some low-hanging fruit that we could do something about. And Katie wrote, I would love to have my honors newsletter club get involved and be able to feature this in our newsletter. That is the kind of contributions that we need. I was so impressed after we had the faculty members, Talia Lipton and Alima K. Kane, in their presentation. Several faculty reached out to me and said, specifically, you know, there are things that we can do right now, and it goes back to the conversation, the comment on low-hanging fruit. I could have more diverse readings as part of the reading selections in my English course, or you know, one of the wonderful things that we talked about, the possibility of having an event through our performing arts, where we could highlight issues of Black Lives Matter and things of that nature. So it really was such a wonderful way, once we started the conversations in this forum, to see how different faculty members and others came alive and offered how they could get involved. And here, Shekinah Quatin, we're almost coming to the close, but I wanna actually lift up a couple of things. Shekinah Quatin asked, does this work delve into empathy training and understanding both experiences, student and organizational, in order to maximize progress comprehensively? I love that question slash suggestion slash invitation for you to join this group.
So now we have two, Stephen.
There you go.
So we're going to keep these chat comments because we're going to reach out to Shaquana. Joe, we love you. We want to make sure that we're going to reach out to you, Katie. We're going to reach out to all these folks that have really given us some really good food for thought. Joe Plank says, the pandemic has led to a lot of discussion as to the value and importance of higher education, with many voices stating it's not worth it. I hope this positions us to show our community the importance of education as a method of social mobility and social change. RCC is well positioned to show the importance and need of higher education. So true, Joe, so true. And in our community, we have the opportunity to reach out to a demographic of folks that we have not fully engaged as we could. Brian Merritt, talented and committed RCC faculty, staff, and administrators believe their place is a place where they can grow within RCC. As a result, that belief in the future of RCC is positively transferred in our servicing and communication approach to our amazing students. I have to tell you, just hearing all of that, and the suggestions and the comments and the questions, we want more. These two co-chairs are looking for you. They have a powerful mission to advance access, diversity, inclusion, equity, and the well-being of all Rockland Community College constituencies through inclusive leadership, cultural competency, cognitive diversity, climate of inclusiveness, cultural intelligence, intercultural communication, and intentionality. What a powerful charge, what a powerful team who will get all of us together to participate in making steps beyond statements a reality for our campus. This is the beginning of our work. This is going to continue to be who we are because it speaks to the value of social consciousness, which is one of the values connected to our mission statement. So I want to thank Allegra and I want to thank Stephen for coming on and being with me today on this Coffee and Conversations. I want to tell you that we want to continue to hear the voices of students and the voices of our employees as we continue to build a more inclusively excellent institution. We are celebrating Hispanic heritage here at Rockland Community College, and we've got some amazing activities that are coming up and very shortly. Our upcoming event, Our Voices panel, Nuestras Voces panels, which these are discussions covering Hispanic perspectives on pursuit of racial justice. And they will be moderated by Dr. Helen Brewer, the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Student Affairs, and sponsored by the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So our employee panel is going to be on Tuesday, September 29th from 3 to 4:30, and our student panel will be Thursday, October 8th from 12 to 1:30. So I hope that you'll be able to be a part of these great conversations, all a part of our Steps Beyond Statements work at our college, and all a part of making Rockland Community College an excellent institution filled with inclusive excellence. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I truly appreciate the great work that you're doing. I want to encourage you to come to be a part of our beautiful startup, which is going to be this Friday, where you're going to get to hear some amazing presentations. And we have a superstar of a guest with us on Friday, Dr. Sarah Goldrick-Robb, and she is a national scholar on helping students succeed and to address the nation's homeless and hunger issues that our students face. Please don't miss that extraordinary event that's going to happen on this Friday. And thank you for joining us on this Coffee and Conversations. Have a wonderful day.